Hey, what's up, folks? Welcome back to On Texas Football. Welcome back to another edition of Sunday School. I'm lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers. Today, I want to get into some of my favorite advanced metrics, analytics to help identify difference makers on the defensive side of the ball and see what those kind of deep dive metrics can tell us about the personnel Texas has on defense. So we'll look at three. We'll look at run stops and stop rate. We'll look at pressure rate, and we'll look at havoc rate. We'll talk about all those and what they mean. This edition of Sunday School is brought to you by our good friends at Duck Camp. We'll give you a message about Duck Camp coming up later on in the show. Now, this does not replace the eye test. The eye test is still the ultimate identifier to me of great football talent, but I do like diving into some of the metrics because oftentimes it can either contextualize your, this opinion about a player, or it can bring new insight and have to almost force you to have to go back and evaluate or reevaluate a player. So we'll get into some of those. Let's talk about on defense, right? You got your main goals are you stop the run, you force him into a passing situation, and you get after the quarterback, force turnovers. Like that's in a nutshell. It gets really detailed and it gets really complex, but in a nutshell, that's what everybody's trying to do. Stop the run, force them into a predictable passing situation, get after the quarterback, force turnovers. Boom. So those three steps. Why are we looking at run stop rate and stop rate overall? Because that's stopping the run early on and early downs that we look at. And by the way, a stop, to get this out of the way, the definitions, we look at Pro Football Focus. Their definition of a stop, it constitutes a failure for the offense. Now, I'm not sure they're looking at success rate, which is getting 50% of the yards needed on first down, 70% of the yards needed on second down, 100% of the yards needed to achieve a first down on third and fourth down. I'm not sure if it's that. I'm not sure if it's EPA per play. It's a win. So we're looking at stops in the run game and stop rate in the run game for players. And then after that, we're going to look at pressure rate, because after you stop the run, get after the quarterback, and that's just your pressures divided by pass rush snaps. And that's also something we got from Pro Football Focus. By the way, everybody's pressure rates are a little bit different depending on what platform you're looking at, because everybody defines pressure as something different. So depending on if you're looking at Sports Info Solutions, or you're looking at Next Gen, or you're looking at PFF, they may categorize something as a pressure where another platform didn't. So that's why you could get some different stuff there. But we'll look at PFF, pressures divided by pass rush snaps, and then we're going to look at havoc rate, my favorite defensive stat probably, which is interceptions, pass deflections, and/or PBUs, forced fumbles, fumble recoveries, and tackles for losses. You combine all those, that number, add them all together, and divide that by total snaps on defense, and that's when you get your havoc rate. All right, and so we'll talk about kind of what the average should be, and talk about the players at Texas and how they fit in those categories. All right, so let's look at run stops and run stop rate really quickly. So if you look at the double-digit run stops for Texas, and this is great because Ethan Burke gives you a great place to start. Ethan Burke last year, he had 20 stops in the run game, which constituted a win for the defense. He was actually your best defender versus the run. Over 15% stop rate in the run game, which, by the way, was third among defenders with at least 50 snaps. That was third best in all of college football. So you know what the high level is 15+%. That's elite. And that's what Ethan Burke was last season for you. So I'm looking for around 8%, right? Let's go around 8%, half of that. That constitutes to me, if you can get double-digit run stops and be an 8%er, right, in your run stop rate, then to me, that's really good. So the guys that fit that criteria for Texas, you ended up having 5 of them that fit both the 8%er stop rate category, but also got double-digit stops in the run game. Rasheem Bowles, he's at 13.2%, somewhere around there in his run stop rate. But that dude had 40 stops in the run game, just a beast. Then you have Tiny Smith in that category as well. He's over 9% stop rate. Colin Simmons, he had 20 stops in the run game, also over 9%. Hero Canoe had double-digit run stops, as well as Alex January, and both of those guys are over 8% stop rate. So those are probably your 5 best run defenders based on the analytics. But when you just look at the stop rate, All right. And don't consider the snaps because you do have 7 defenders who had double-digit run stops. And this are the guys I just mentioned. Add Ian Gerfard to that and add Jelani McDonald. Now, Jelani McDonald played so much ball, like he had over 700 something snaps, that it really dilutes a lot of these categories for Jelani McDonald. So it's why the eye test is important, right? Just adds a little context. This is going to add a layer of nuance to the evaluation, but the eye test is the eye test. And Jelani McDonald is a baller, right? Led you in turnovers last year and takeaways. So we'll talk about that. But Jelani McDonald, still one of your best defenders in the run game, in my opinion. I think he'll be even better under Will Muschamp. But getting back to the stop rate, if you look at stop rate, and I said throw-out snap count, regardless of snap count, you're just looking at stop rate, your highest, and I don't consider walk-ons in this category because they list walk-ons sometimes too. So some of the guys that expected to play coming back for Texas in 2026. This should make Longhorn fans feel good. At the top of the list stop rate, Justice Terry, a return player. He's at over 13% stop rate in the run game. It's really good. And then second on that list, just looking at stop rate, and he only had 30 snaps against the run. So very small sample size. Another guy, very small sample size of snaps in the run game. Josiah Sharma, really small, but he's at over 12% stops in the run game. You need somebody that can play over that nose in addition to Ian Gerfard, somebody that can play in that A gap. They're hoping Josiah Sharma can be one of those guys, but flash. Like I said, this is not considering the snaps and the competition. We're not getting into all that. I'm just looking at the raw data. And so Justice Terry jumps to the top of that list. That's really good. I said that's one of those things you hope the data reveals to you that, oh, okay, small sample size, but the young man definitely flashed and made plays. All right, so that's the run game. And after you move on from the run game, the hope is that, hey, you got him in a second and long and a third and long, and it's a predictable passing situation. This is when pressure rate becomes so important, right? Can you generate pressure? Can you create pressure? Remember when Sark and PK first got to Texas, they couldn't generate any pressure, and they built that defense to generate pressure. Actually started inside in the interior with guys like Byron Murphy and Tavondre Sweat, and then now they got Colin Simmons on the edges to create that kind of pressure. But the pressure rate is interesting because if you're looking at, obviously, you're looking at guys who had at least triple-digit pass rush opportunities, and you're looking at pressure rate. And to me, pressure rate, you got to be 15% or higher to be considered a difference maker, right? We talked about the 8%ers with the stop rate. Well, I mean, I'm looking at guys like David Bailey, right? Considered one of the best, if not the best pass rusher in the country, the edge from Texas Tech. He's over 21%, right? Pressure rate. Ruben Bain, the edge rusher or edge defender out of Miami, he's right at 15%. Romello Height, the other edge from Tech, he's over 17% pressure rate. Mikael Kamara, the Indiana edge defender, he's like 17%. Cassius Howell is right below 14% from A&M. Akeem Mesidor is around 15%. So that to 15% to me is you're a difference maker. You're a 15%er in the pressure rate category, difference maker. Colin Simmons, 18. He's over 18%. Yeah, legit, right? Difference maker. So among the players, all right, in pressure rate for you that had at least triple-digit pass rush snaps and also had a 15% pressure rate or higher, you're looking at Colin Simmons, Brad Spence, and Rasheem Biles of the guys that are going to be available for Texas. That's it. Colin Simmons, 18%, Brad Spence around 16%, and Rasheem Biles right around 15%. So you still, if you're looking at guys who have proven themselves over an extended sample size, you don't really have another guy opposite Colin Simmons. Now, maybe you consider Brad Spence to be that guy because Brad Spence did play a lot on the edge last year for Texas. Some would say he's undersized, but for that size, he presents a really formidable power pass rusher on the upside. And like I said, has proven he can generate a pass rush. Now, if we're just looking at pressure rate, regardless of pass rush snaps, it gets really interesting. Just look at pressure rate. DBs jump to the top of this list because usually they have these well curated pressure schemes for them. Now you're gonna send a DB, you're gonna make sure like, oh yeah, I'm gonna scheme up this DB pressure. All right, think about the Seattle Seahawks, who led the NFL in defensive back pressures. The Seattle Seahawks by pressures from their DBs I think they did it by 10. I think the second place team in pressures from DBs. They had 10 fewer than the Seahawks. And what won in the Super Bowl pretty much? Blitzing the DB. Well, I think it's more of a simulated pressure, but bringing that DB, Devon Witherspoon, who had 20, I think he had 22 pass rush snaps the entire season, and they brought him 7 times in the Super Bowl. Ended up getting 4 pressures. One of those ended up being a ball that he knocked away, ended up becoming a pick 6, got a sack. That's a big part of the formula for Seattle that makes them unique. But I digress. Getting back to Texas, Wardell Mack only had 1 pass rush snap, but he got a pressure. So he's at the top of that list. John McDonald only had 3 pass rush snaps, but he ended up with 2 pressures out of those 3 pass rush snaps. By the way, I think in Muschamp system, you're going to see Jelani McDonald blitz a little bit more or be used in pressure packages more in whether you're talking about a simulated pressure or you're talking about him on the edge or you're talking about bringing him from the 3rd level, whatever it is. I think you'll see that more. He was actually very small sample size. He was pretty good. Grayson Littleton only had 11 pass rush snaps, but Grayson Littleton ended up getting 3 pressures out of those 11 pass rush snaps. So very small sample size, obviously, and unique in the obviously trying to quantify that because it's DBs who are creating that pressure. But it's worth considering that last year, and I just looked at Texas DBs last season, when you brought a defensive back, all right, when you had a pass rush or pressure generated by a defensive back, whatever that may be, simulated pressure, fire zone, cornerback blitz, not sure exactly what it is. You had 31 of those, and you got pressure on 35% of those snaps where DBs were brought on a pass rush. And of the guys coming back, that still number drops to 28 when you lose Malik Muhammad and lose Michael Taft. Still drops to 28%. And considering what we just watched with the Seattle Seahawks, maybe worth considering bringing more of the 3rd level of the defense on some pressures. But anyway, getting back to it, then Justin Cryer is interesting. The young man they brought in from Florida State. Now, only 38 pass rush snaps, but he's over 20% pressure rate. Your linebackers are really good in this category because I said Cryer's 20%. Ty Anthony Smith, only 48 pass rush snaps, but he's over 18% pressure rate. Rasheem Biles he's got like 100+ pass rush snaps, but he's 15%. If Brad Spence is a linebacker, he's at 16%. You got 4 linebackers that are over 15% pressure rate. That's the good news. The bad news is of your top 10 players in generating a pass rush, or at least in pressure rate, the top 10, only 2 of those guys are considered D linemen, or you can put on the D line. Colin Simmons, who's the best pass rusher on the team, but here's a name to look out for. We talked about how the analytics, the advanced analytics, at times they will reveal something to you that you just didn't expect. Smith Orogba is a name they keep an eye out for. He's over 17%, not only 17 pass rush snaps, 6'4", 220, 17%, almost 18% actually pressure rate generated last year. In the very small sample size, he's a name to look out for because you're looking for someone opposite Colin Simmons who can generate a pass rush. Because right now, Lance Jackson and Zena Umeozulu, they're at 10%. That's just not even close to where you need to be. So both of those guys do need to work on pass rush moves, BGO, being more disruptive on that edge. Because right now, opposite Colin Simmons, the analytics would say Brad Spence and Smith Orogba are your best shot, or bringing down one of your linebackers to be on the edge a little bit more often, spinning them down on the edge. And you don't want to do that because your linebackers are a little undersized. You know what I mean? Rasheem Biles a little undersized. So is Ty Anthony Smith. Nothing wrong with them. Rasheem Biles can do it. He played on the edge a lot at Pitt, so he's fine. He can do it. But I'm saying ideally in the SEC, you put Anthony Hill out there because Anthony Hill had that size. He had the frame to do it. You'd ideally like Brad Spence makes more sense just because he's a little bit thicker. But even I think they want somebody longer to play that edge. So that's interesting. The analytics do reveal that you still don't really have that confirmed pass rusher opposite Colin Simmons, which we all know. But you do have other ways to generate pressure. Now, the box, since you have so many good linebackers, your box blitz next year, bringing guys from the box should be, I think, an integral part of Muschamp's system. Georgia's box blitz rate was probably 35%. Texas was at 20, well, probably I think it was 37%, their box blitz rate, which was actually around 18, top 20 in the country. Texas was around 28% box blitz rate. That should improve, or at least that should increase with Rasheem Biles and Anthony Smith and the numbers I just gave you. If you go look at the rate that Pitt, I believe, brought 6-man pressures, they led the country, right? In 6-man pressures, a lot of that being blitzing Rasheem Biles and bringing Rasheem Biles. A lot of run blitzing from them too on early downs. So maybe that's something you'll see from Muschamp's system, trying to maximize Rasheem Biles, but also utilize the pass rush abilities of Anthony Smith, of a Justin Cryer, of a Brad Spence, depending on where you line them up at. So pressure rate, so after you generate pressure, once you figure out how you can generate pressure and who are your best pass rushers, you got to figure out how to take the football away. So we talked about the 15%ers in the pressure rate. We talked about the 8%ers in the run stop rate. I think 2%ers, I'm probably in Havoc rate, is probably a safe place where you can say that's a difference maker. Now, like I said, some of that gets diluted, or at least diluted, because depending on snap rate and how you utilize a player. But if you want to look around the country at some of the best players, I just look at Ohio State's defense, because they got a ton of these guys. Caleb Downs at 1.6%, which is really good. So I think maybe 1% is average, 1.5 is good, 2% is really good to great, and 3% means that's elite, right? If you go look at Arvell Reese, the linebacker from Ohio State, he's at 1.8% Havoc rate. All right. And this is, like we said earlier, basically splash plays divided by snaps on defense. Sonny Styles is at 1.7%. David Bailey is a monster. He's over 4%. Jacob Rodriguez, the all-world linebacker from Tech that won all the national awards on defense, he's at 3.8%. There you go. So you got some context for it. There's some dudes like, man, that dude is just he's a walking, he's basically just a walking splash play waiting to happen on defense. But you kind of see where we're trying at least the area, right, where we're trying to gauge these guys. So Havoc rate, right? So Texas Havoc rates is interesting. If you go look at just Havoc rate with players who have played at least triple-digit snaps. Let's just triple digits out there. Rasheem Biles is going to be at the top of that list. Rasheem Biles is so damn disruptive that I just gave you the numbers for Jacob Rodriguez, who, like I said, won all the defensive awards, and he deserved them. He was fantastic, the Texas Tech linebacker. He's at 3.8%. So 3.8% of his plays resulted in a splash play on defense. I'm talking about a forced fumble recovery, interception, pass deflection, or a tackle for loss. You don't get better than that on defense, right? And Rasheem Biles is at 3.8%. He's right there with him, neck and neck. Talk about playmaking linebackers. Colin Simmons on your defense. Like I said, this is the guys who are playing like triple digits, but also, above the 2% line that I was kind of talk about there, or threshold. He's at 3.4%. He's right at 3.5%, like basically right at 3.5%, which doesn't shock anybody. This is where it gets interesting. You start looking at Cade Phillips. He's over 3%. Makes sense because he also, in a very short time, ended up leading you in PBUs and didn't play that until the back half of the year. And the Pro Football Focus has him as your 4th highest graded defender overall, period, from last season. So shout out to Cade Phillips. But so he did play over 100 snaps. And then you're looking at Anthony Smith. He's at 2.5%. And then you're looking at Grayson Littleton and Brad Spence, both guys who played at least triple-digit snaps for you, and they're around 2.2%. They're both above the 2% kind of criteria that I'm talking about for your best playmakers on the team, your Havoc reekers on the team. All right, so now let's look at Havoc rate, regardless of snap count. Strangely enough, that jumps to the top of the list. And this guy actually jumped to the top of the list. I didn't mention him in I didn't mention him early on because he actually did this also when we looked at pressure rate. Isaiah Coleman was randomly at the top of the pressure rate thing. He only had like one play early on, but he got a pressure out of that one play. He actually got like a half a tackle for loss. So his numbers are really skewed. They got him he's at 25% havoc rate and pressure rate. He was up there at Wardell Mack at the 100% pressure rate. So just so you have all the numbers. So maybe Isaiah Coleman deserves a second look. Who knows? But this the smallest fraction of snaps for him as a player. But Smith Orogbo is another guy that jumps to the top of this list. Only 21 snaps for him. By the way, Isaiah Coleman only had 2 snaps. So only 21 snaps, but over a 9% havoc rate. Guy made plays the few times he was in there, forced a fumble, got a couple of tackles for loss. And then it's Rasheem Biles, then Colin Simmons, then Cade Phillips. Jordan Johnson Rebel jumps in there as a 3%er. So give him only 66 snaps, but he ended up making a difference. And Justice Terry is another guy. In addition to Brad Spence, Grayson Littleton, the guys we talked about, Justice Terry, and Anthony Smith, of course, but Justice Terry jumps in there as a guy right at 2%. So that is also encouraging. That's a guy that can wreak havoc. You can move him around the defensive line, and he's a guy that can make plays. Right? We talked about him earlier in the stop rate. He was one of your returning leaders, or your returning leader in stop rate, over 13%. So very encouraging to hear Justice Terry, at least him being I would say being highlighted in these metrics a little bit more, kind of showing his freakish ability. So when you're looking at all of these things considered, you want your top playmakers on defense. Who are the guys who can generate pressure at a high level, which is 15% or more. The 15%ers in pressure rate. Your 2%ers are better in havoc rate, and your 8%ers are better in stop rate, who have at least kind of double-digit run stops. Only 3 guys: Colin Simmons, Rasheem Biles, and Ty Anthony Smith. The only guys that are at the top of all of those categories. But keep an eye out for players who have shined, or at least that were highlighted in 2 of these categories, right? Keep an eye out for them. Those are your Jelani McDonald should be in that conversation. Grayson Littleton, by the way. Jelani McDonald was your 3rd highest graded run defender by Pro Football Focus. So put him in that conversation, 3rd highest graded run defender. Grayson Littleton, he was your 2nd highest graded run defender by PFF, but he was up there in havoc rate and pressure rate for you. Jelani McDonald was up there in pressure rate and your run stops for you. He had double-digit run stops. Smith Orogbo is a young guy we said we should keep an eye on based on some of these metrics. Brad Spence was high up on 2 of these categories, pressure rate and havoc rate. Justin Cryer, young man coming in. He was 1 run stop short of having double-digit run stops, but in pressure rate, he was one of the highest pressure rates at the linebacker position. And then Justice Terry, we talked about, should also be a guy considering his freakish ability, but he is also standing out in a couple of these categories too. So those guys is going to be a big, and it could be a big, spring for guys like Wardell Mack and Jordan Johnson Rubel. He flashed in one of these categories as well. Those guys will get a lot of reps because Jonah Williams is playing baseball, and you got guys like Xavier Fields-Simi coming back from some injuries and surgery. So those guys will get a lot of run. Let's see if they can stand out in practice. And so Ron Roberson is another guy that I don't necessarily, the eye test doesn't necessarily tell you Ron Roberson balled out this season because a lot of us remember special teams, but just give you some quick numbers on him real quick. So I was looking at just random metrics on guys. 2nd highest graded defender in coverage for Texas. He was the 6th highest graded defender overall. 8th lowest catch rate allowed among SEC quarterbacks with 46.2. Fewest yards allowed per coverage snap in the SEC among cornerbacks with 0.32. And 2nd lowest passer rating when targeted among SEC cornerbacks with a 53. When I saw it, I was like, hold up. I had to take a second look at that. But that's why I love the metrics. Like the eye test, though, still got to have the eye test, but the metrics are fun to break down sometimes. All right, let's thank our sponsor over at Duck Camp before we end things. We appreciate them. Duck Camp makes gear for folks who live for being out there, whether that's in a duck blind at sunrise or on the 40 acres for a Saturday kickoff. Born right here in the great city of Boston, Duck Camp builds best-in-class hunting and fishing apparel that works just as well for a full day in the field as it does for a long day of tailgating. From sun protection shirts that keep you cool during those early season scorchers to their iconic game series hats that feel like instant classics. Duck Camp gear is ready for football season, hunting season, and every season in between. Get out there, stay out there, and hook 'em horns. Shop Duck Camp at duckcamp.com. Thank you very much to our friends at Duck Camp. Thank you to Matthew behind the scenes for twisting and tweaking the dials. Thank you for each and every one of you for watching and for listening. And for Matthew and for Duck Camp, Lifetime Longhorn Rod Babies. Until next time, hook 'em horns.